Welcome. NSG 423 Study Section 4 Evaluation Methods. Introduction. In this study section, you will be introduced to the meaning of measurement and evaluation, method of evaluation, evaluation method in the classroom and clinical settings, and self-evaluation. The purpose is to increase knowledge and skill in evaluation self and others in the classroom and clinical settings. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to explain the concept of measurement and evaluation, explain different methods of evaluation in the classrooms and clinical settings, explain the term self-evaluation, concept of measurement and evaluation. Measurement is a procedure for assigning members or specified attributes or characteristics in a manner that conveys the real-world nature of what it is being measured. It refers to the process by which the attributes or dimensions of some physical object are determined. When we measure, we generally use some standard instruments to determine how big, tall, heavy, voluminous, hot, cold, fast, or straight something actually is. Standard instruments refer to physical devices such as rulers, scales, thermometers, pressure gauge, etc. Assessment is a process by which information is obtained relative to some known objective or goal. Assessment is a broad term that includes testing. A test is a special form of assessment. In other words, all tests are assessments, but not all assessments are tests. We test at the end of a lesson or unit. We assess progress at the end of a school year through testing. Whether implicit or explicit assessment is most usefully connected to some goal or objective by which the assessment is designed. A test or assessment yields information relative to an objective or goal. In that sense, we test or assess to determine whether or not an objective or goal has been obtained. Assessment of skill attainment is rather straightforward. Either the skill exists at some acceptable level or it doesn't. Skills are readily demonstrable. Assessment of understanding is much more difficult and complex. Skills can be practiced, understandings cannot. Evaluation goes beyond measuring, testing, or assessment. It involves judging the value or worth of a student, of an instructional method, or of an educational program, and making decisions. Evaluation is the process of observing and measuring a thing for the purpose of judging it and of determining its value, either by comparison to similar things or to a standard. When we evaluate, what we are doing is engaging in some process that is designed to provide information that will help us make a judgment about a given situation. A situation is an umbrella term that takes into account such ideas as objectives, goals, standard, procedures, and so on. When we evaluate, we are saying that the process will yield information regarding the worthiness, appropriateness, goodness, validity, legality, etc. of something for which a reliable measurement or assessment has been made. For example, in determining the temperature of the classroom, there would be need to get a thermometer and take several readings at different spots, and perhaps average the readings. That is simple measuring. The average temperature tells us nothing about whether or not it is appropriate for learning. It is the context of the temperature for a particular purpose that provides the criteria for evaluation. Teachers in particular are constantly evaluating students, and such evaluations are usually done in the context of comparisons between what was intended, learning progress, behavior, and what was obtained. To sum up, we measure distance, we assess learning, and we evaluate results in terms of some set of criteria. These three terms certainly share some common attributes, but it is useful to think of them as separate but connected ideas and processes. Tests, on the other hand, are systematic procedure for observing persons and describing them with either a numerical scale or a categorical system. Thus, tests may give either qualitative or quantitative information. To arrive at an evaluation, you use various means of assessment such as observation, interviews, and administration of tests. Thus, assessment is the process of judging the worth of a person, program, or event using tests as tools. Tests are used regularly in relation to a number of classes of decision, such as selection. Decisions are made when it is necessary to accept some persons and reject others. Placement. Decision involves assigning persons to different levels of instruction or work. Classifications. Decisions involve the assignment of persons to one of several categories, jobs, or programs that are not necessarily thought of as levels of work or instruction. Career counseling and guidance. Decisions are made by individuals as they explore possible careers and the world of work. Educational, diagnostic, and remediation. Diagnosis implies that both the content and the nature of the instruction that the students will receive are known. Program improvement and evaluation. Decisions are often improved by the use of test information. It is frequently helpful to measure the instructional process as well as the outcomes or product of instruction. Tests serve other purposes such as providing information for grading students, giving feedback to students to facilitate learning, providing feedback about the effectiveness of learning, motivating students to study, and serving as scientific tools in research in education and the social sciences. What to evaluate? In evaluation, the teacher should evaluate according to the objective set for each domain of learning. Cognitive domain. Evaluation of cognitive learning involves measuring the student's knowledge and understanding in a subject by means of oral or written tests. For a teacher to facilitate the evaluation of cognitive learning outcomes, the instructional and behavioral objectives should be stated very clearly and categorically. Affective domain. This is area of learning in which we evaluate students internalizing behavior, attitudes, value, emotion. In order to evaluate students' behavior, a norm or standard has to be established to provide the yardstick. For example, to assess the students' behaviors, you should be concerned with the way they talk, dress, respect, attentive, and so on. Psychomotor domain. This aspect measures the extent to which the student is able to apply the skills which he has learned in classroom setting to practice. Giving birth to patients on the ward, which was taught in demonstration room, is an example. Process of evaluation. Evaluation is also a process that involves the following systematic series of action: identifying the purpose of the evaluation, identifying a time frame, determining when to evaluate, selecting the evaluators, choosing an evaluation design or framework or model, selecting an evaluation instrument, collecting data, interpreting data, reporting the findings, considering the cost of evaluation. The steps can be modified depending on the purpose of evaluation. Method or tools of evaluating learning in classroom. Tests these include essay and objective tests, term papers. Tests as tools for evaluation. The major tools of evaluation in institutions of learning are tests. Tests can be of various types. They can be classified on the following basis: by kind of item, choice item, true or false, multiple choice, matching, completion items, short answer items, essay items. By how observations are scored: objective test, subjective test, by degree of standardization, standardized test, non-standardized test, by administrative conditions, individual tests, group tests, by language emphasis of response, verbal test, performance test. by emphasis on time, power test, speed test, by score referencing scheme, norm referencing, criterion referencing, by what attribute is measured, achievement test, specific subject test, aptitude test, general scholastic aptitude test, readiness test, self-report questionnaires, vocational or career interest, attitude and values questionnaire. General principles of test construction. Planning the test. To plan a test, you prepare a two-way table called a test blueprint. The names of the major categories of a taxonomy head the table columns, while the row heading indicates the major topics of the subject matter to be tested. In the body of the table, the cells, formed by a combination of a particular taxonomy, category and a particular subject matter topic, contain specific instructional objective. Thus, the blueprint serves as a double entry classifying scheme for specific objectives. After objectives are classified, the number of test items that will be used to test each objective is recorded in the table. Thus, the test blueprints serve as a plan which assures that all important objectives are included and that they receive the proper emphasis on the test. Developing a table of specification. Let us assume that we wish to construct an objective test on anatomy and physiology. The major topics in the curriculum are organization of human body, cell theory, human genetics, concept of adaptation and homeostasis, issues, organ and system. Let us assume that out test is to measure knowledge, comprehension and application. Organization of human body, OH, is 10, cell theory, CT, is 12, human genetics, HG, is 12, concept of adaptation and homeostasis, AH, is 8, tissues, organ and system, TOS, is 8. Total, we have 50 items. The framework for evaluation. Putting a value on a measure can be based on scores which are norm-referenced. This is comparisons with an identified reference group, e.g. through the use of percentile rank, criterion referenced. This is comparison with stated absolute achievement levels, e.g. indicating level of mastery based on percentage score. Purpose of evaluation. From learner point of view, evaluation is necessary for determining level of knowledge and understanding of the learner. This can be at the beginning of a unit, a course, or at other times. Evaluation helps to determine level of learner performance towards achieving state objective, to identify specific difficulties of individuals of the whole group as basis for further teaching. This can fall under summary's purpose of evaluation. Purpose of this evaluation is to identify specific difficulties so as to be able to plan the next step of teaching. Helps teacher to know the learner, his strengths and weakness, and suggest additional assignments or remedial measure as may be needed. Evaluation helps learners to acquire attitude and skills of self-evaluation, leading to individuals becoming more self-directing in his study. From instructor's point of view, evaluation provides information for selection of future learning experiences, aids in judging appropriateness, attainability of instructional objectives. From administrator's point of view, enables the teacher or instructor to assign marks and report learner progress to their parent, guardian or other institution body. Enable instructor to select students for special classes and determines whether the students are meeting the graduating requirements. Evaluation in classroom situation is more elaborate than in the clinical setting. Elements of evaluation: gathering of information, processing the information, decision making on the information. Principles of evaluation. Measurement is just a part of evaluation. Evaluation is quantitative description, which is measurement plus value judgment. It is not always every time we allot mark. Hence, evaluation is described as qualitative description plus value judgment. Non-measurement scales can be used to evaluate a person. The systematic evaluation in clinical setting or classroom setting involves recommendation about junior nurses or student nurses respectively. Not just academic records, but value judgment on level of self-initiation, competence, how many fears, good, poor, etc. on individual behavior and performances. Hence, evaluation can be both quantitative, qualitative, and value judgment or descriptions. Evaluation should be viewed at all times as a process intended to be helpful to search for what is good, what needs to be corrected to stimulate improvement and encourage other further efforts. Functions of evaluation: achievement of educational goals, improvement of educational programmers, motivation and guidance of learning of individual learner, motivation of the teacher. Evaluation done enables the teacher to identify area where the instruction is effective and the area that is deficient. Motivation of faculty, that is, it enables members of schools, of nursing, of staff member of administrative sector to work together for improvement of curriculum and educational programs. Types of evaluation in education. The two major evaluation in classroom situation are formative evaluate, summative evaluation. Formative evaluation used to monitor learning progress. The major purpose is to provide continuous feedback to both learner and instructor about learning success and failures. The feedback gives reinforcement to students, gives information for modified instruction, and prescribing group or individual remedial work on the part of the teachers. Results of formative evaluate are typically not used for assigning course grades, since it is directed towards improving learning and instruction. Summative education usually comes at the end of a course or unit of instruction. This main aim is to determine the extent to which the instructional objective has been achieved. This is used as end of a session examination. It is used primarily for assigning grades or for certification. The technique of evaluation will be determined by instructional objective. It also provides information for appropriateness of course objective and effectiveness of instruction. Evaluation in the clinical setting. In clinical settings, nursing students perform nursing procedure and care on actual patients, while the clinical instructor is there to supervise them and ensure they don't make a mistake that will be detrimental to the patient. They also evaluate them through observation. They rank their skills and knowledge while also providing feedback on their strengths as well as areas where they can improve. At the end of the clinical course, students are graded on their overall clinical experience. The evaluation in clinical settings should be based on three approaches. Student-centered approach. The student-centered approach gives students an active role in learning. Instead of being passive in the classroom, students demonstrate what they learn through performance of procedures that have been learned, presentations, care reports, or research papers that require them to synthesize, evaluate, and analyze subjects. This method lets the instructor measure whether the students are meeting a class learning objective. Competency-based approach. The competency-based approach helps the instructor and students stay current with the socio-political forces that affect current healthcare and nursing standards. One goal is to graduate nurses who require minimum training, supervision, and orientation on the job. The approach examines clinical units, interpersonal relationships, and clinical decisions based on observation and how the nursing students perform in clinical situations. It is usually not graded based on letter grades, but on a satisfactory and unsatisfactory basis. Professional development approach. This approach evaluates and reinforces the link between theory and practice. It combines the student-centered approach and the competency approach. This let the instructor further evaluate both methods in a comprehensive evaluation of students. Tools for evaluation in clinical setting. The major tools used to evaluate learning in clinical setting are oral tests, practical demonstration, objective structure clinical examination (OSCE), observation, simulation, testimony of others, student self-evaluation, written portfolio evidence, interview, patient comments, peer evaluation, case study, team mentorship. Types of clinical evaluation. Observation. Simulation. Summative assessments using simulation may occur where opportunities to demonstrate competence in practice are limited. Students participate in lab classes to practice the nursing skills they have learnt in the classroom. This practice is generally completed on mannequins or simulation dummies, as this allows students to make mistakes without posing a risk to an actual patient. Instructors evaluate students by asking them to demonstrate their nursing skills. Objective Structured Clinical Examination (OSCE). This is objective clinical or practical examination in which all the candidates are presented with the same test. The marking scheme for each station is structured and specific skill modalities are tested at each station. This type of assessment gives room for the evaluation of candidates based on variety of procedure or psychomotor skills. Traditional practical examination. This is a form of assessment tool in which there is a prepared guideline for the assessment of every procedure done by the students. Two assessors are involved in the assessment of one student. At the end of the exercise, the two raters will find the average for the candidates. Self-evaluation. A self-evaluation is an individual thoughtful and considered written review of his or her performance during the evaluation cycle. It involves rating established goals, competence, and overall performance. In order to become lifelong learners, students need to learn the importance of self-evaluation. You can do this by filling out self-evaluation forms, taking tests, writing revisions of work, asking questions, and through discussions. When students evaluate themselves, they are assessing what they know, do not know, and what they would like to know. They begin to recognize their own standard, their own strengths and weaknesses. They become more familiar with their own belief and possibly their misconception. After they self-evaluate, they will be able to set goals that they feel they can attain with the new knowledge they have about themselves. Teachers should encourage self-evaluation because self-assessment makes the students active participants in their education. There are a variety of ways for teachers to provide the students with self-assessment. Research suggests that the simplest tool to encourage students' self-assessment are evaluative questions that force students to think about their work. Some examples of these questions include the following: how much time and effort do you put into this? What do you think your strengths and weaknesses were in this assignment? How could you improve your assignment? What are the most valuable things you learned from this assignment? It is important for teachers to model self-assessment too. Teachers need to show their students that it is important for everybody to self-evaluate by doing their own self-evaluations. One thing teacher can do is to ask their students for feedback on how the class is going and what the teacher is doing well and not so well. In this way, the teacher is showing that they want to make improvements where needed. Teachers could put up a suggestion box and they can hand out evaluation forms at different times of the year. This shows the student that continuous improvement is important. The benefit of self-evaluation. It enables you to become an active participant in your own evaluation. It enables you to honestly assess your strengths and also areas you need to improve. It enables you to participate more constructively in the evaluation meeting with your teacher or supervisor. Self-evaluation also serves to increase commitment to goal setting or achievement. competency development and career planning. Qualities or principles in evaluation tools. Reliability, especially scorer reliability. Validity, relevant, practicable. Manageability, within available time, manpower and finance, especially considering large classes. Validity ensures that assessment tasks and assessment criteria effectively measure the student's attainment of the intended learning outcome at an appropriate level. Total reliability of a particular assessment will mean that different assessors using the same assessment criteria and mark scheme would arrive at the same results. This may be the case in some quantitative assessments. Complete objectivity is otherwise hard to achieve. With summative assessment, it is, however, necessary that we aim for the goal of complete objectivity. This means that there is need to be explicit intended learning outcomes and assessment criteria. Students should have access to them when the assessment task is set. Where there are multiple markers, they should be discussed. In an ideal world, they should be tested on a sample of cases to ensure that all markers are applying the criteria consistently. Moderation and or double marking are means of ensuring consistency between markers and internal consistency for an individual marker. Clinical performance evaluation should be about assessing both knowledge and skills. When devising assessment tasks, it is important that it addresses the skill you want the student to develop. Manageable. The scheduling of assignments and the amount of assessed work required should provide a reliable and valid profile of achievement without overloading staff or students. Practicable. Can the task be done in the time available? Can the task be achieved within existing constraints such as students' number, accommodation facilities, etc.? Are the tasks achievable by the students at their level of study? It is important that the overall workload is examined from the point of view of both staff and students. Are students over-assessed? Is it necessary for each intended learning outcome to be assessed separately? Study section summary. In this study section, you have learned the meaning of measurement and evaluation, method of evaluation both in classroom and clinical settings, and self-evaluation. The process of evaluation has been highlighted. Purposes and function of evaluation has been dealt with. In evaluation, therefore, the evaluator should therefore ensure that the evaluation instruments imbibe desired qualities discussed. Now we've come to the end of study section 4. Thanks for listening.